questions, so I'll turn this off until we have questions since it only has 2 bars. Bing. There we go. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Hello. Good evening, everyone. Would you all please take a seat? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everyone. We would like to get started, so if all of you who are still standing could please take a seat. I feel like I'm yelling, so if I come across as no? Okay, great. Okay, last few people getting seats. We want to get this going so we can leave and so the kind people from the Junk Center can go home on time. So thank you all very much for joining us. It is great to see this sort of a turnout on the 2 days prior to Thanksgiving, so I appreciate your making time for us. So I'm Dave Jarius, Chair of the Planning Board, and on behalf of the Planning Board, I would like to welcome you to our first in-person public discussion of our upcoming North Main Street and MBTA 3A multifamily district zoning. That's a mouthful. So this evening is a chance for the Planning Board and for our Zoning Review Advisory Committee, which is composed of 10 people, 8 at-large people from the community, and 2 members, one from the Design Review Committee and one from the Historical Commission. It's our chance to listen to you. So this meeting is really all about giving you a brief overview of things, and then we have some interactive, I was going to call them experiments. They're not experiments. They're some things you can do and look at some plans and talk to the people who know what they're doing. And so, so tonight is our listening mode. So as a very brief background, the Planning Board has been working on re-envisioning our North Main Street corridor for a couple of years. As we seek to revitalize it and to prepare for our future residential and commercial needs. Over the last year, we've also been ramping up our work to comply with the state's MBTA 3A multifamily zoning requirements. And the purpose of that is to increase the supply of residential units near MBTA stations, which in our town means our town center station. And if you have questions about why that and not Wedgemere, we can definitely go into that on the side. Tonight we will be hearing from our zoning consultants. We have Michael Wang and John Rufo from Foreman Place, who are primary consultants for our North Main Street work, and Emily Innes from Innes Associates unfortunately is ill and won't be able to join us this evening, but we have Mark? Jimmy. Sorry, Jimmy. Jimmy from Innes Associates in her stead to lead the activities over there. So we need your input separately on both projects, but also combined because they are overlapping, and the reason they're overlapping is because The 3A work requires area outside of the area for the train station. It also requires enough area, and that overlaps with the southern part of North Main Street. So we want your input on both separately and jointly, and hopefully this will all become a little clearer as the evening progresses. There are issues unique to both projects, and our consultants would love to get your input on both. So even if you're here for just one particular thing, at some point, please take off that hat and put on the hat for the other one. So if you're here for MBT 3A, at some point, put on your North Main Street hat, and vice versa. We really need to get input from all of you. So we're going to be hearing short overviews of these two projects, and then, like I said, we're going to have time for interaction. And so one of the things I'm going to talk about, oh, that's my introduction. The timeline, what this is all leading up to. So we're leading up to presenting zoning at the spring 2024 town meeting, which starts in April of next year. We have a deadline because by the end of 2024, the state requires us to have put in zoning which is compliant with the MBTA 3A. So we want to do it in spring in case something goes awry and we need to come back in the fall. So this is sort of, we're trying to put some padding in the schedule just in case. This is November 21st, our public meeting. Do I have a laser on this? Maybe not. And then our next meeting on this is, we have another public meeting with the Zoning Review Advisory Committee. And they will, these are all public meetings. That's going to be remote, and that's on December 12th, and it's on the town's calendar, and it's a Zoom meeting. And then we're moving forward with starting to do draft zoning later this year with getting some input from you. We're going to be working with other boards. We're going to be presenting to other boards. We have a meeting with the select board next Monday to start them on the process of thinking about this. And then we need to get the language pretty much finalized by early February. So it has to go through legal, and it has to get on the warrant. And so the warrant closes 45 days before town meeting. It's a very hard deadline for us to get this done. So we are going to have more public outreach. This isn't the last one, and we don't have that on our schedule, but we're planning it, so I don't have exact dates for that. So now let me welcome Michael Wang of Foreman Place, who's going to lead us on a discussion of North Main Street.
Thank you. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Very nice to see you in person. In fact, I've been working on this project for about 1.5 years now, and this is the first time I've seen just about everybody in person, including planning board members, which is hard to believe. But anyway, it's fun to see such a crowd, as Diev said, on Thanksgiving week. So I'm curious, this is technically our second community meeting, and the first one was a Zoom meeting. And how many of you actually saw my presentation by Zoom? Or let's put it a different way. Who did not see my presentation by Zoom? Okay, good. So about half people. My partner raised his hand. That's not good. So John Rufo is here as well, my partner at Foreign Place, to help facilitate discussion. And we've got 5 boards set up over there specific to North Main Street, which I will introduce this evening. So what I've decided to do is try to mix up my presentation a little bit, because I know a number of you have seen it, but it's still going to cover sort of the same core topics. This was the agenda essentially for my previous presentation, and we spent some time looking at sort of the history of how we got here. The North Main Street corridor is unique in that it's an opportunity that you guys have identified that you're interested in, because coming out of the 2030 master plan, as opposed to the 3A, which is sort of mandated by the state and you have to address. So we'll look a little bit at how we got to this point in time, and we'll touch on issues of density, and it's good to have some air, actually. We'll talk about issues of density and where that might be located. What are some of the goals for achieving additional housing for a diverse demographic, and then what are some of the tools to achieve that. We'll go through these things, and then so to start, and I'm just going to have a few slides that I've shown before, but just for those of you who haven't seen it. Below, under evolving opportunity areas, number 4, number 5 represent essentially the southern portion and the northern portion of the corridor. While the goals, the language is somewhat different between those two, they're essentially saying the same thing, that the corridor is really a tremendous opportunity for infill development, redevelopment, utilizing mixed use to help create a vibrant streetscape, but also thinking about infrastructure improvements to the corridor that will make it more walkable and safe, and become a gateway from the north down to the CBD. Together with the master plan, I'm sorry, I'm looking this way and not this way, but together with the master plan was an action plan, which basically was an implementation effort. The MAPC did a brief study in 2021. This is a graphic from their study, which I've found interesting in that it talks about the potential for change based on a number of variables. Boards quickly. I'm trying not to make this a long, because we really want to get you guys your feedback. But so let me keep moving here. This is a slide that I've carried with me just because it was part of the distillation process with the planning board over the last year and a half, and identifying sort of primary goals, again, of density and ground floor commercial. But what I wanted to show you was the North Main Street corridor from Cross Street at the top, where the top red arrow is, down to the bottom is Skillings Road. So that dashed red line represents the extent of what we're calling the North Main Street corridor. With Swanton Street sort of in the middle there. And it's just the bottom part from Clark Street to the south that is within that half-mile radius of the MBTA station. And so as you'll see when you look at some of the MBTA work, it's that southern part, that GBD2 section, that overlaps between both initiatives. And one, just so people understand, there's an underlying zoning that exists today there, and then the MBTA communities component that's going to come in is going to be an overlay. So it'll give people two different options for how to develop, two different sets of criteria, and so that's what we're looking at. Our initiative is to amend the base zoning for the North Main Street corridor to facilitate some of the things that you have identified in your master plan, and then the MBTA communities thing is a different mechanism to address the state mandate. Hopefully that's helpful, but you can ask me again when I get over there. All right, just two more slides here. Sort of single-family style homes that have multiple units in them, to townhouses, to multifamily mixed-use, larger building footprints. And essentially what we found was on smaller sites, you were able to achieve a density or number of dwelling units per acre that was in the range of maybe 15 to 25 dwelling units per acre. And on some of the larger sites that with greater dimensions in both directions, there's more flexibility, and so you actually can begin to push up into the mid-50s in terms of density. And that is really a target, and this is where we'd love to get some of your feedback, but it's very common to see densities 50 dwelling units per acre and higher in transit-oriented development contexts. So I think particularly for the southern portion of the corridor, that makes a lot of sense. But unfortunately, the way the zoning is written today, with the constraints that are in there for height and open space requirements and floor area ratio, you really cannot get close to achieving that kind of density today. In fact, you can see that in the red down there at the bottom, these are numbers coming out of the MBTA compliance model, which Innes and Associates has been working on. There's a possibility today by zoning of doing 5 times more density in the CBD than there is in the GBD2, the southern part of the Main Street. So you could argue that to relieve a little pressure on the CBD, it might make sense to have more flexibility for development in that section of the corridor. Works with not only what you want to see aesthetically along the corridor, but also avoiding negative impacts on abutting properties that, residential neighborhoods perhaps behind the introduce. And what I'm really looking forward to is we've got a pile of Post-its and pens over there. John and I will be circulating around, happy to answer questions and have conversations, but we would really love it if you all could put your questions or your concerns or your comments on Post-its and just stick them right on the boards that they're relevant to. So just a brief introduction to these last 5 images here that you see up on those boards. This is a summary of different types of density and what it looks like. And I showed some slides in a previous presentation. It was called the missing middle, which is this whole type of housing that's between single family and the larger multifamily sort of block buildings. And a lot of zoning today doesn't really allow this typology or these typologies. So some examples of them are on the upper left is this, a typical, it looks like a single family home. It's a large single family home, but it has 4 units in it. So that yields on a 1/4 acre, that would yield 16 dwelling units per acre. So that's how you get to a density of 16. Anyway, that moves forward as you move through into townhouses, and sometimes the mix of use impacts that because you're losing residential units on the ground floor. So for example, if you really want to see a commercial on the ground floor to have a vibrant streetscape, then it might be worth incentivizing a little extra height if someone would put mixed use on the ground floor. So anyway, as you move across here, you'll recognize this third one on the top there is actually on North Main Street, and it's an 8-unit. It's 2 buildings, each with 4 units, and that is 8 units. So, and that's only on a 0.38 acre site. So you can see that is starting to get up over 20 dwelling units per acre. And then as you move into some of the larger projects, these on the bottom here, on the 2 corners, are 2 very new projects in Newton. And they are complex projects which have ground floor retail. There's some parking as well at grade behind the retail liner. But these are 3 to 4 stories, and the one on the lower right there gets up to 5 stories in one location. But you can see the density here is now getting into the 40 to 50 dwelling units per acre. And you can get comfortably into the 50 dwelling units per acre range even if you stay down at 4 stories. And we can talk about those numbers in more detail if that's helpful. All right, I'm going to go much quicker, sorry. This second one, well, you'll see them over there. This is giving you in the center some images of what North Main looks like today, and obviously issues with parking in front, extended curb cuts, all things that are not happy for a pedestrian-friendly environment. And then there's some examples of residential buildings there which are actually positioned in a way, to address the street. But I guess the question for you is, they don't have the activated, commercial storefronts to them. So how important is that? Is it okay to have some of that scattered in so that maybe you have more nodes of commercial, like at the corner of Swanton and North Main, or is it better to have a continuity of retail ground floor? I know you're not and things like that, how you access parking, and then the building design, which is all about facade design, the quality of the ground floor, materials, roofscapes, overall architectural character. And then there's some examples of four pages on either side here, which you can again look at over there, from design guidelines that we wrote for the city of Newton recently. So they talk about things like building height and massing, building street relationship, et cetera. All right, last 2. This is a fascinating topic, which I'm really would lower right there, your current parking requirements in the GBD2 are for 2 spaces per residential unit. Now, if those of you who've been following the MBTA communities bylaws that have been being passed in communities like Newton and Arlington recently, will note that they have 0 spaces required as a minimum. And the key point is that that's a minimum requirement. And some communities like Arlington actually are putting in a maximum. So they're saying you can't provide more than 1 space per dwelling unit. So that's really intriguing if you think about it. And so the question is, what are the benefits of having less parking? And so I've outlined some of those, which you can again look at on the board. But obviously, it increases the developable area and creates more opportunity for density. It also allows for more integration of open space. And it has other benefits, such as continuity of storefronts. You see in the upper left image, it's quite a nice building with ground floor retail, but it also has a parking access that kind of interrupts the sidewalk feeling there. So parking is an intriguing thing, and remember, when we're talking about minimums, it's still, the developer still has the right to, if they say they need to have a certain amount of parking, they still have the right to do that, because we're just saying that there's no minimum requirement. And it's really the maximums that are what control how much area is devoted to parking, like you can see in that lower image there. Okay, and the last one, very briefly. But there's definitely been an emphasis on, if you look at the size of the parcels south of Clark Street and understand and recall that we talked about that being within the half-mile radius of the station, there's definitely an opportunity there that's sort of a mixed-use, larger parcels, transit-oriented development type opportunity there. Whereas if you look at the middle section with the Swanton Street and Bellino Park intersection in the middle of it, it's actually a very thin liner particularly along the west side, which is the left side here, of the corridor. And that's, obviously there's a residential neighborhood there, so it's important to think about the quality of that area, and also realizing that there's a lot of blue lines around there identified as historic assets. And then the last part up at the north, a lot of larger commercial parcels again. Also, an opportunity to think about what's that first impression of Gateway you want to make coming from the north. So it's interesting. So the question to you all is, how do you feel the corridor might want to evolve? Is it a one-size-fits-all approach to the corridor? Are we looking for a continuous expression along the corridor, or should it change as you move away from the core and the station and get more up towards the Woburn line, and what, because that will drive how we think about the various variables and where we want to have the density. All right, I'm going to stop there. Sorry, I took longer than I thought I always do. Diab, do you want to jump back in here? I think this is where Emily was going to give a little talk about 3A. And
we also, how did we get to interactive stations already? Is that really okay?
That was the next slide, but the MBTA stuff are on those boards there. I don't know if that helps you.
So we had originally planned to have little Q&As in between, but I think we're running a bit late. And because we don't have Emily here to fill you with all of the information about 3A, I thought maybe I can give, where'd Jimmy go? Jimmy, do you want to say anything, or? Yeah, and I can fill in anything. If you have any questions. Oh, and I forgot to introduce Taylor Herman, our town planner. Taylor, would you like to stand up? So welcome, Taylor. If you haven't known, Taylor is our new town planner. He's been with us since August. So, okay, that one's live.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Jimmy. I work with Innes Associates. My boss, Emily, again, everyone mentioned she's not here today, but she's a town planner. I'm sorry, not a town planner, a planner, helping out the town meet compliance for MBTA communities. And what we're trying to do is help the town meet compliance regarding the MBTA Communities Act, which is a law passed by Massachusetts stating towns are required to meet a certain density requirement, depending on what type of MBTA community they are. For example, Winchester is it's a commuter rail community, which means you guys have a commuter rail in your station, as you guys know. Thank you very much. So you guys have a certain amount of requirements to meet the MBTA Communities Act, and we're here to help you guys comply. Thank you. And I'm here to help you with any questions you have. We have a map of initial districts we tested for the town of Winchester, and I'm there to help you guys with any questions you have regarding that. Thank you.
So let me give you a couple quick statements about the Act. So what the Act says is that within a half mile of an MBTA station, you have to have a certain number of units. You have to have a certain area which is developable. And overall, you have to have a minimum density of 15 units per acre across all of the areas. So we also have, so you don't have to have all of the land. There's a certain, like for instance, Winchester is required to have 38 acres approximately. Some of that land, at least half of that land, has to be within a half mile of the train station, but you can have, the other half can be outside. So as long as you have at least half within the half mile of the train station, you can move things around a bit. You need to have a certain number of units within that half mile, but you don't have to have all of them within the half mile. They can be outside. So there is a little bit of flexibility. One of the key things is that if you want to choose an area that isn't contiguous with your station area, it has to have a minimum of 5 acres. So when you look at this map of Winchester over there and you say, why don't we put it here? You got to say, okay, can I get 5 acres in this area where I can zone for multifamily by right? Right? That's the key question you have to ask. So for instance, if you want to go to Wedgemere and you say, why don't we use Wedgemere instead of, because we have a train station there, why are we using the center business, the center one? Go find 5 acres around Wedgemere and draw a line and see whether you can actually make it work. So there are constraints and there are technical details that we can get into. But the key on this is that it's multifamily by right, which means that you don't have to go through a special permit to build it. A lot of places in town, you need a special permit to build in the center business district, if you wanted to build all residential, you would have to get a special permit because we're trying to preserve commercial. The state wants us to look at housing as one primary thing. So it doesn't mean you can't put commercial there. So that's where it gets complicated. So you can have an existing, like we can keep the existing zoning for the center business district, and then we can put an overlay on it for the MBTA district, which says you can do multifamily by right within this overlay district, but if you want to do one of the uses that's already there, you have to use the underlying zoning. So the zoning can get complicated. Please ask questions if that doesn't make any sense. There are questions that I know people are going to ask as to how do we protect the historical structures? That's a big thing in town. So we have protections built into our center business zoning right now. The question is, are they sufficient? Are they flexible enough? How do we want to handle reuse of historic buildings? The current zoning allows adaptive reuse of historical buildings. So we have protections for tear downs. For instance, if you tear down a historic building in the center business district, then essentially you will not get a permit to build for 5 years. So there are disincentives so these are all the questions you need to ask. How do we preserve what's going on? How do we protect what's important and provide flexibility for more housing? And that's what this Communities Act is trying to get people to do. There's a stick and a carrot. The stick is that if we don't do this, we're going to lose lots of funding from the state. The carrot is if we do this, we're going to get funding from the state. Maybe that's the same thing. It's a sweet stick, or I don't know, a hard carrot. But we also need housing in our town. We have at least 30% of our residents, no, is it 30? It's 25% of our residents are housing burdened, which means they spend more than 30% of their income on housing. So we need housing for people who want to stay in town. We need housing for, we don't have any housing for people between the ages of, say, 30 and 45. We know that, we have a lack of housing for people who are seniors. So we have, our housing stock does not fit our needs and probably doesn't fit our future needs. So this is all coming to the fore because the state is in this enormous housing crunch and they've decided we're going to do something about it and communities are going to have to do something about it. So we have to move forward looking at housing. This is one tool. This is one tool that we can use that the state has sort of given us by fiat that we have to use it, but there are other tools. So it's not like all of our eggs are in this basket, but this is a basket we have to put eggs in. And that's the last of my bad metaphors. So I hope that's enough. I know I didn't do as much as Emily or Jimmy did, but I think we have time for some questions. And so if you have, so why don't we take like, I can't see the time. We wanted to leave at least 45 minutes for you people to wander around and interact. So why don't we do about 5 minutes of questions. And I'm going to carry this mic around and so everyone can hear you. And if you could just say who you are, where you live.
Hi, my name is John Levitt. I live at 153 Cambridge Street.
And you're on the ZRAC.
And I'm on the ZRAC. But more importantly, I have owners of property in the CBD district that I've called, and they're all asking me, they're looking for information.
Okay.
So that's the big question that they're asking. I got two of them sitting beside me, and they're asking what's going on with the CBD district.
Well, we are, go ahead from you. Nope, no problem. So what's going on is we are in the process of getting the zoning. So what we're seeing now is the public part. So what happened is that we got money from the state earlier this year to draw up a compliant MBTA 3 district. So we know we can achieve that with existing dimensions and things like that, okay? So we don't have to do anything really special in order to achieve it in terms of changing dimensions. So the question, and so now we are in the listening phase, is we want to listen to you as to how do you want to handle those special parts of the downtown that you think are important? Are there other parts of town where you think the housing could be? Maybe we need to expand it there within the limitations, again, of we want to maintain commercial corridors, things like that. There are all of these questions on the table. So we're not at a decision point in terms of exactly which way we're going to go. We have some good ideas to move us forward, but this, the plots, it's not up there. But we have, so we have an idea of where we can do things, and so the question is, where does the town want to go? So that's the information we've got. We've got a bunch of discussions by Michael and Emily where they've done presentations to our boards, and we should have that up on the town website. So you can go and look at that, or you can call our town planner if you have specific questions, but we're still moving the process forward. Yes, please.
Let me just add that one of the interesting things about the MBTA Communities Act is you see on that board up there, there are 4 districts that have been identified now across the whole collection of those districts, which is 37, 38 acres. Not everything has to be exactly the 15 dwelling units per acre. It's the average across those whole districts. So if you have more density already that you can do in the CBD, as it exists today, that means that you can have less than 15 in some other parts of those districts, as long as together they average out to the 15 dwelling units per acre.
Let's just go straight up.
Oh, thank you. Hi, I'm Bill Swanton. I live on Cambridge Street in Precinct 5. Sort of the elephant in the room here is, what's the effect of all this on the town budget? If we end up with all of these affordable housing here, and we have a couple hundred new kids in the schools, maybe have to build a school, has any analysis been done on what that's going to do to the town budget and to the taxes of the existing taxpayers?
Thank you for that question. It's a great question. So this is to create a housing that's affordable, not to create affordable housing. So these are going to be market rate units. These are not specifically, there's actually a cap by the state which says that you can only put in 10% affordable, deed restricted affordable on these units. If you want to go above 10%, you actually have to file an economic feasibility analysis to show that it's not going to affect the amount of affect the ability to develop. But these units are not affordable in the terms of, 80% or 60% AMI. These are market rate units. So that's the second question. And so here's a question I have to ask you. How many units of housing do you think this town produced in the last 10 years? About 100. How many new kids moved into town? A lot more than 100. The key is that when you think about the schools, you got to think about the existing housing stock with all of the empty bedrooms, because that's where the kids are coming in. So that's one, okay? So I don't have numbers on that, but when I look at the number of people who don't have kids in their schools, and you got to do the math on this. If you have one kid in school, let's say it costs 10 grand a year. Doesn't matter where you live in town, whatever you pay for in town taxes will not cover that kid plus your services. So all of the education for our kids is paid by people mostly who don't have kids. So we know there are a lot of people in town who don't have kids. When they leave, their empty bedrooms are going to get filled with kids. So that's one of the reasons. We want to keep them in town, maybe move them to a smaller place, and have them still pay taxes. So what is going to happen is when you put these units near transit-oriented areas, typically you want to have units which don't have a lot of parking because the people aren't going to use them because they choose to live near a bus station or a train station. This is going to be aimed at people who are in that range of, say, between 35 and 45, who are moving out of homes, come back from college, don't have kids yet, or they're seniors who are downsizing. Those people typically are not going to put kids in school. So I'm not certain about this, of course, because this is all, these are demographics we don't, I can't see in the future. But I can assure you that most of the kids that are coming into this town are not going to be coming from those units. They're going to be coming from all the empty bedrooms. In my community, I live right off of North Main Street. I live in a 6.5 the RG where you only need 6,500 square feet to put a house in. I can tell you a lot of the smaller houses are all got rebuilt with 3 to 4 bedrooms. And they're all filled with kids. So it's not the new housing that we have to, it's definitely a point. But there's a bigger picture. And so it's a very good question. I don't think anyone's going to be able to answer that, but let's look at the big picture and bring those in. Okay, so this gentleman here, and then you've been waiting. I will get to you.
Yeah, I was just, Bill Band, I live over on the west side of town, quite a ways away from here. But I'm interested in, you have 2 different work streams going on here, and are they complementary, or is this causing difficulties either in implementing the master plan or complying with the MBTA new zoning requirements? So do they work together, or are they? Okay.
Yes, they work together. As a matter of fact, Foreman Place and Ennis Associates are coming together as one. We're working with both of them at the same time to do this. So we have Ennis Associates, which has the expertise in MBTA, and also other planning experience, and these guys who do a lot of urban, suburban revitalization work, and they are working together very well. So this is a single team looking at this, so I don't think we have any problems.
Do the regulations on both sides, so to speak, reinforce each other, or do they
because we,
problems that you have to work out?
they don't cause a problem because we can use overlay to do the MBTA. So we can deal with the underlying, we can do new zoning, for instance, for North Main Street for areas where we are pretty sure they're not going to come in and put heavy, these large buildings, but we can do an overlay on top of that to handle with the MBTA. So they work together. The overlays help. I want to get all these non-ZRAC people first, so. And then we have to get going. But sure, go ahead.
Hi, Ben Albiani. I actually am wearing 2 hats in this. I'm the current president of the Chamber of Commerce, and I'm also a property owner in Winchester Center and up North Main Street. My question, you said in the CBD zoning, is that the MBTA would supersede the CBD zoning. So would that give a developer, if he can do something by right, would we lose opportunities to have retail on the first floor? Would you have to go through a special permit to get the retail on the first floor where you wouldn't have to go through a special permit to get residential on the first floor?
So the underlying zoning in the CBD stays the same. So if you can get a commercial right now without a special permit, you can still get it then. So that will not change.
Density laws would be different. My density laws would be different in the CBD if I was trying to.
If you were trying, well, first of all, the density doesn't change because we can meet all of the rules with the existing density. So we don't have to change building heights, anything like that in the CBD. It's all, we can use the exact same stuff we have on the books. What changes is that in the areas where we permit the overlay, people can come in and say, we're going to do multifamily by right. But what we have done is when you go look at the map, you'll see that we've, in this first go-around, we've excluded all of the main commercial corridors in the CBD from the overlays because we knew that we wanted to protect the first floor commercial. So the other way you can do it, and other towns are doing it, is they'll say, we will give you an incentive if you put commercial on the first floor. So they could say, we will give the ability to add more units if you put commercial in. Because as we know, if you get the chance, you put in residential, there's a lot more money in residential. So there are incentives. So that's one of the things that we're wondering about is there a possibility of putting incentives for commercial in the overlay districts? You don't have to actually, I mean, it's multifamily by right, but if we want to put in commercial, can we put in an incentive? And then, like I said, we have areas that have been X'd out so that they are definitely not part of the overlay. And one last one, and then let me give it to you, this side.
Hi, I'm Susan Busher, and I live in the Holton Cross Street district. My question is, and pardon my innocence here, but that these are changes to the zoning laws only by overlay. So what is the impact on the current owners, which I think a couple of questions have been getting to, as far as whether they want to rehab or expand or sell their current use? And are they going to be restricted by this MBTA or the new northern corridor zoning? And if somebody new buys that property, are they going to have to revise the use in any way to meet the zoning laws? In other words, is it that if developers don't jump in on this and existing owners don't sell on this, the change may not happen or may not happen quickly, and that still is compliant without issue?
So we are not, one of the beauties or consequences of this overlay concept is that if you own a property and it's zoned a particular way, you can continue to develop it with respect to that zoning. So you can do whatever you want to do that's allowed now. I think what we're trying to do is expand some of the options in order to give more flexibility for development. But the overlay district actually increases the amount of flexibility a property owner has, because all of a sudden they're able to put in multifamily by right where previously they weren't able to. So I don't see negative consequences of this. I think that this gives property owners more flexibility because they can do something that they weren't able to do before. And because we're retaining, in the CBD, we're retaining the zoning. In the North Main Street area, we're looking at trying to make it easier to bring in some commercial because some of the rules are really bizarre. Like, for instance, you can't have a cafe north of Swanton. You need a special permit to do that. So there are certainly some rules which have not stood the test of time, that we're trying to create more incentives for people to do things. So I think we'll have a positive impact on property owners. I don't think there are negatives because we're expanding their ability to do things. And with that, I would love to It's 10 of.
It would be really helpful for people, just really quick.
Okay, really, really quick.
No problem.
'Cause we're-
And it might help if you had the map up, which was great. Thank you, everyone, for all the work on this. If we just zoned, saved some of the like historic downtown, our town is a National Register Historic Center, do we not meet the numbers? You know, if you just did that north corridor, basically from Stop and Shop up, is that not enough? And then maybe just talk about Route 3, because you mentioned that. And then I guess the other question is there going to be a meeting for all the property owners who own downtown? Because I think they have a lot of questions and I don't know the answers. Thank you.
So we cannot just do it. We need to have a certain amount within a half mile. And so that goes up the Clark Street. And we need to have half of the units and half of the area within that half mile. So we cannot just, yeah, and so you'll see a big circle somewhere. You saw the circle on there. We are required to do some work in that area, so we can't get out of that. It is a question of where we want to put the rest of it. And then there's a question of, why do we want to put it here rather than there? Is it business? Is this a better place for business? Is it a better place for multi-residential, multifamily? We already have this commercial corridor up North Main Street. Do we want to, how do we want to support that? Do we want to put more residential there because we want to bring foot traffic to businesses? So concentrating some of the density makes sense. But that's an open question, as long as we meet the rules. But yeah, we have to do stuff in downtown. There's no way around that. And so with that, I'm really sorry. We do have to go because we have to get out of here by 8:30.
I just have one really quick question about 40B. How do these additional units?
Wait, hold on a second, please.
I'm sorry. With regard to the affordable, Dorothy Simboli, Precinct 6. With regard to 40B and the 10% threshold that we are below, so we're vulnerable to hostile 40Bs coming in, how will these additional units impact our housing stock and where we are in terms of meeting that 10%?
It won't affect it at all, because we need to get to 10% based on our existing housing stock. If new housing comes in with a minimum of 10%, it doesn't change that ratio for all the rest of town. So as long as we come in with 10%, then we can essentially say the new housing is sufficient, but we still haven't made up for the rest of the town where we're down 7%. Enforce what?
How are you going to force them to?
Do 10%? That's part of the zoning. You just say you must have, we already have it in the center business district and along the GBD too. We say if you put in more than this number of units, if you put in more than 6 units, you have to have 10%. If you put in more than 25 units, I believe, you have to have another 5% at a different. So we already have mechanisms in there. What we have seen is that people come in and they say, well, I don't want to put in that unit, so I'm going to put it in 5 units instead of 6 units so I don't get hit by that 1 unit. So we can't, that's a separate issue. But this will not budge us on the SHI. The state doesn't, in this sense, the state's trying to use the market to create more units to lower prices. That's what it wants. We're down hundreds of thousands of units in the Boston area. So the 10% is meeting, we just need to build a lot more housing. So this is a market-driven approach. You build more, the overall costs go down. And on that, I'm going to ask you all now to take part in our exercises. We have got on the right, if this side of the room could go to the right and talk MBTA 3A, and if, this side of the room could go to my left, your right, and talk about North Main Street, and then in about 15 minutes, I'll go up there and I'll ask you to switch. We can play do-si-dos or something like that. So I appreciate it. Ask all the questions you got. So everyone's got post-it notes.